Rising Sun is a small city of around 2,300 residents, located in Randolph Township in Indiana. It's located around 25 miles southwest of Cincinnati, making it the perfect commuter town for those who want to break away from city life. Due to the small size, the city has a more town-like feel to it, and people like to look out for their neighbours. It's the kind of town where people grow up and stay to raise their own families. In 2009, however, a teenage boy entered the police department in Rising Sun. He had a gruesome confession to make. It was a quiet Sunday night for Rising Sun police on the 29th of November, 2009. Officers were at police headquarters carrying out paperwork and routine duties when a teenage boy appeared in the foyer at around 8:15 p.m. He was pale-faced and he had red hair. He had a blank expression on his face as he approached one of the officers and said that he had accidentally killed his younger brother. Police officer Wayne Sykman took the teenage boy to the side. He recollected. He was a little bit crying, kind of a whimper, teary-eyed. The officers on duty that night thought that it was some kind of prank. A sick prank at that. But still, they needed to investigate these claims. The teenage boy was adamant that he was being truthful, and he told the investigators to go to the Rising Sun City Park, where he had allegedly disposed of his brother's body. Ohio County Sheriff's Deputy Adam Ziegler responded to the scene. He had been directed to a wooded area just off the park, around 30 yards away from a maintenance building and an informal pet cemetery. He began to search for the alleged body, illuminating the dark area with his flashlight. As he searched, he spotted what looked like a man-made mound of leaves and foliage. Investigating further, he could see an arm. Deputy Ziegler moved away some of the leaves and foliage, and he found the lifeless body of a little boy. Rigor mortis had already set in. The teenage boy at the police station identified himself as 17-year-old Andrew Conley. The deceased boy in the park was his 10-year-old brother, Connor Conley. Connor was born to Bridget and another man in 1999. In 2002, Bridget married Sean Conley, and Sean adopted Connor and his older brother, Conley. Sean really looked at the boys as if they were his own, and he and Bridget worked hard to provide them with a stable and loving environment. Bridget and Sean divorced a couple of years later, and Bridget settled down with another man and got remarried. Sean still looked after the boys as if he was their biological father. The boys split their time between both Bridget and Sean. After 5 months, however, Bridget and the other man called it quits on their relationship, and Bridget and the boys moved back in with Sean. The couple remarried, and they were living together as a family, just like they were those years earlier. Connor was a 5th grader at Ohio Elementary School, where he excelled as a student and made friends with ease due to his friendly nature. On the weekends, Connor enjoyed fishing and swimming with his family. He had just recently passed his hunter education course, and he was looking forward to begin hunting. He also loved reading comic books and was an avid skateboarder. Connor's bedroom was decorated with all of his own drawings, and he liked to play video games, read, and even write stories. Connor also loved being a little brother, and he idolized his older brother, Conley. According to the family, Conley loved Connor as well. Speaking of the relationship, Bridget said, he just thought Andrew was, the greatest thing because he had a car, he had a cell phone, he had freedom. Upon making the tragic discovery at the park, Deputy Ziegler called for backup and called in forensic experts to set up a cordon around the crime scene and collect evidence. Connor's body was sent to the medical examiner's office for a cause of death to be determined, while Conley was arrested on suspicion of murder. He was brought into the interrogation room, and he made a full and detailed confession. As a forewarning, the following segment describes the murder of a child. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Conley described the scenario which led to his brother's murder. The day before Connor's body was found, his parents were working the overnight shift, and Conley was in charge of taking care of him. While Conley was frequently entrusted to care for his brother, and had done so on numerous occasions, this evening he wasn't best pleased. See, Conley wanted to go out that night and hang out with his friends. Conley and his friends liked to get together most evenings. They would typically go to someone's house, smoke marijuana, drink a little alcohol, and play video games until the early morning hours. Bridget told Conley that if he wanted to hang out with his friends that night, then he needed to find somebody to take care of Connor. He was only 10 years old after all, and he couldn't be left home alone. After Bridget and Sean left for work, Conley began searching for somebody else to take care of Connor that night. The brothers climbed into Conley's car, and they drove the short distance to their grandmother's home. They knocked on the front door, but their grandmother wasn't home. Conley was feeling dismayed. He really wanted to go out that night, but he couldn't leave Connor home alone. Conley then tried their uncle. He called him up and asked if he could look after Connor. His request was denied. Conley wasn't sure who else to contact, so the brothers simply returned home. At some point between 8:30 p.m. and 10 p.m., the brothers began to wrestle in the bedroom that they shared. It was something they had done so in the past, like many other brothers across the world. As they wrestled, Conley got behind Connor and placed him into a headlock. He pressed down on his brother's throat with so much force that Connor passed out and crumpled to the ground. In a calm tone, Conley said to the investigators, "He kicked and threw punches and yelled for me to stop, but I couldn't. It just got out of control." With his brother immobile, Conley dragged him into the kitchen.
Did you drag him or push him or pull him, or how did that happen?
I tried to pick him up, and it wasn't working very well, so I dragged him and then took him the last couple of feet in the kitchen and laid him down.
Here, Conley retrieved a pair of gloves and put them on, telling investigators that he had done this so that his fingerprints wouldn't be all over Connor's neck. He returned to Connor and continued to choke him. He said that he did this for around 20 minutes, until he noticed the blood was coming from Connor's nose and mouth. He commented to the investigators that strangling Connor was exhausting, and he needed to stop several times to have a break.
Yeah. Did you squeeze pretty hard? Yeah. And you used two hands, is that right? Two. Okay, at one point did you say that you used one hand?
Yeah, it was like...
How did you do that?
It was like... that.
And how long did you think you had your hands on your brother?
I would say 20 minutes.
Conley next got a plastic bag from one of the drawers in the kitchen. He placed it over Connor's head and then secured it in place with black electrical tape. He commented to the investigators that he had done this to prevent any blood from seeping onto his clothing or onto the carpet, adding that it was also done because he did not want to look at Connor. By this point, Connor was still alive. He briefly regained consciousness as the plastic bag was secured over his head. He muttered, "Andrew, stop." Connor's pleas fell upon deaf ears. Conley then dragged Connor by his feet down the stairs to the basement. As Connor's lifeless body lay on the cold floor of the basement, Conley went back upstairs to get a garbage bag. He returned to the basement and attempted to put Connor's body in the garbage bag. However, the garbage bag wasn't large enough to contain Connor's entire body, so he just placed half of his body in it. Conley then dragged Connor by the legs over to his car, which was parked outside. Once outside, under the cloak of darkness, Conley struck Connor's head several times on the concrete to ensure that he was fully dead. Conley hauled Connor's body into the trunk of the car, slamming it closed behind him. With Connor hidden away in the truck, Conley cleaned himself up in the family home. As he was strangling Connor, he had gotten some blood on his sleeve, and then he also got some blood on his trousers as well. Conley changed his clothing and hid the bloody clothing in his bedroom closet, and the bloody gloves in a chair. From the family home, Conley drove to his girlfriend, Alexis Moravsky's home. He had a gift that he wanted to give her. It was a sweetheart ring. Alexis had no idea that Connor's body was in the trunk of the car parked outside. In fact, she commented that Conley appeared more happy than he had been for a while. The young couple watched the movie The Green Mile before Conley kissed her goodbye, told her that he would always be there for her, and then left. After leaving Alexis's home that evening, Conley drove to the Rising Sun City Park. He got out of the car and walked around to the trunk where he lifted Connor's body out. He carried him halfway and dragged him the other half over to a wooded area. He dropped Connor's body on the floor and covered him with some sticks and foliage. He returned home in the early morning hours. His parents still weren't home from work. They were working the overnight shift at a casino. Since Conley still had the house to himself, he cleaned up some of the blood that was left behind from the frenzied attack. At around 2:30 a.m., Sean returned home. Conley was still awake, and as Sean later said, he was acting completely normal. Sean inquired as to where Connor was, assuming that he was fast asleep in bed. Conley told him that he was staying overnight with his grandmother. Sean thought nothing of it. After all, Conley had said that he wanted to go out that evening and would find somebody to take care of his little brother. Conley then asked Sean if he could have some condoms. 3 hours later, Bridget returned home from work. Conley was still awake, but that wasn't surprising for Bridget. Conley had been having sleeping problems, and quite often he was awake for most of the night. She and Conley made some popcorn and then watched a movie together before Bridget fell asleep on the sofa. That same morning, Conley armed himself with a knife. He crept into his parents' bedroom where Sean was fast asleep in bed. Bridget was still asleep on the sofa. Conley revealed to investigators that as he stood there in silence, he thought about bringing the knife down on his father's chest, but he ultimately decided against it. According to Conley, he felt as though he had been dragged into his parents' bedroom by a force, and he had been fighting the urge to kill his father. He stated, "I was standing there trying not to go over and kill him." Sean woke up and he saw Conley standing before him with something shiny in his hand. Conley quickly put the knife back in his pocket, and Sean didn't get a proper look at what it was, so he wasn't aware that it was a weapon. Sean asked Conley what he was doing. Conley replied that he wasn't feeling very well. Sean got up out of bed. He felt an overwhelming sense that something wasn't quite right. He checked on Bridget, who was still asleep. He then checked Connor's bedroom, but remembered that he was supposedly safe and sound at his grandmother's home. Sean then sat down and spoke with Conley, He suggested that he go and lie down and get some rest if he wasn't feeling well. Later that same Sunday, Conley and Sean watched a football game together, following which Conley was asked by his parents to go and collect Connor from his grandmother's home. Instead, Conley returned to the park where he had disposed of his brother's body. He didn't return to the actual spot where Connor had been dumped, but just the park. Here, he walked around the trail, listening to his iPod. He said to the investigators that he was going to check on Connor's body, before adding that he heard a noise, so he just continued to walk. From the park, Conley climbed back into his car and was driving to the police station when he spotted one of his friends, Jared. Conley confided in Jared that he had killed his little brother and was handing himself into police. Jared was stunned, but he told Conley that whatever jail he goes to, he would come and visit him. Conley then bumped into another friend, Dylan, and informed him of the same. From here, Conley handed himself into police. After making a full and detailed confession to the murder of his brother, Conley shared some chilling insight into his mindset. He was asked what had driven him to kill his younger brother, and he said that he didn't know. He said that when he was strangling Connor, he felt bad about what he was doing, but he just couldn't stop. He then commented that he had never hurt anybody else in his life. Investigators wondered if some kind of argument had preceded the attack, or whether Conley had been angry at his little brother for some reason. Conley told them no, and said that he and Connor didn't argue any more than any other brothers. He then added, "I just believe that I'm sick." He referred to himself as a monster. Since 8th grade, Conley had fantasies about killing somebody, and he often found himself fantasizing in particular about slitting somebody's throat. As he sat in class, his mind would drift to murder. In particular, he liked to think about murdering another boy in his class, a boy who he referred to as a jerk. He fantasized about luring this boy into the school bathroom and then slitting his throat. When the investigators asked him for more information about these fantasies, he said, "Just like taking a knife and cutting someone's throat, or just beating them to death with my hands." One afternoon before the killing, Conley had grabbed a knife, and he planned on killing a cat. He'd gone as far as to grab the cat and tape its paws together. But he pulled out the knife and then decided that he couldn't go through with it. So he used the knife to cut the tape and let the cat go free. According to Conley, killing his brother satisfied a craving, like eating a hamburger satisfied hunger. During his interrogation, he said, "Like I had to. Like when people have something, like they're hungry, and there's a hamburger sitting there, and they know they had to have it. And I was sitting there, and it just happened." During his interrogation, he also commented that he had been watching the TV show Dexter, and said that when he killed his little brother, he felt just like the main character, Dexter. Conley then gave the investigators the keys to his car, which was parked in front of the Empire House on Rising Sun's front street. He told them that there was a towel in the trunk of the car which had some blood on it. He had used the towel to clean his own hands of his brother's blood.
After you killed your brother, put him in a plastic bag, put the tape around his face, put him in the trunk of the car, took him down to that place and dumped him. You went to your girlfriend's house and had no emotions at all. Your girlfriend didn't even know you killed your brother.
That's why I need help.
Okay.
Why I'm sick.
Okay, I said that like that because...
It's the truth.
It's the truth.
It's the cold hard truth.
After speaking with investigators for several hours, the officers called Bridget and Sean and asked them to come down to the police station. When they arrived, they were informed that their youngest son was dead, and their oldest son had admitted to killing him. Bridget crumpled to the ground and let out a guttural scream. Sean had a complete look of disbelief on his face. Bridget was allowed to go into the interrogation room. The grief on her face was evident. She stared at her now only son and said, "You killed my son." Conley calmly replied, "I know." Bridget later commented to the investigators that Conley had possibly killed Connor simply because he wanted to hang out with his friends that night. When this suggestion was put forward to Conley, he completely denied it. With the confession, prosecutors filed preliminary charges of murder against Conley. They were charging him as an adult, with prosecutor Aaron Negangard commenting, "This is an evil child." Due to his young age, prosecutors could not seek the death penalty against Conley. But prosecutor Negangard said, "I believe Andrew Conley is a dangerous person, and that's why we'll be considering the maximum penalty that we can impose." Connor's autopsy would be completed shortly thereafter. It was performed by Dr. Dean Hawley, the autopsy director at the Indiana University School of Medicine. He found that Connor certainly had been strangled to death, much like Conley had detailed. During the autopsy, he observed small fingernail marks to Connor's neck, which indicated that he had tried to pry his big brother's hands from around his neck as he struggled for breath. This showed that he wasn't unconscious when he was being strangled to death. Dr. Hawley commented, "There was a struggle, a violent struggle." The autopsy also revealed that when Connor was in a chokehold, Conley had used such force that Connor had bitten down on his tongue and almost completely severed it. Connor's larynx was crushed and it was pushed back to his spine. There was also evidence of sexual abuse, but no penetration. To say that it was a violent and frenzied struggle and a prolonged death would be quite the understatement. Conley's defence team would subsequently mention the evidence of sexual abuse. They completely denied that it had happened, and so did Conley. When it was mentioned by investigators, Conley replied, "I did not do that. I swear to God. I did not assault my brother. I did not. No, never. I would never even think of that." While Dr. Hawley was adamant that there was evidence of sexual abuse, the defence said that if this were true, then the prosecution would have charged Conley with such. There was never any mention of the sexual abuse ever again. The tragic discovery in the park sent shockwaves throughout the small community. Superintendent of Ohio Community Schools said, "Connor was such a good student. He was well liked at school and he had a lot of friends. This is obviously a tragedy, but in a small community like this where everyone knows everyone, it's even more so." Students returned to school on the Monday after their holiday break. Many had already been informed of the tragedy by their parents. The school arranged for counsellors to come in and speak with the children, as well as 4 ministers. To make sense of their grief, the classmates of Connor erected a small white cross at the park where his body was found. There was a message on the front which read, "In loving memory of," and "Classmates of Connor 2009. The murder and arrest came as a complete shock to those who knew the family. See, Conley had no juvenile record, and at school he was known as a good student, always earning top grades just like his little brother. He never had to be reprimanded for bad behaviour. He was described by people who knew the family as nice, normal, and polite, with one relative, Debbie Snyder, commenting that the family were strong and balanced. What many people didn't know, however, was that Conley had been harbouring deep and disturbing fantasies, and his family had been concerned about him. From around 7th grade, Conley had general feelings of depression and mental anxiety. He allegedly had suicidal thoughts, and as he got older, these thoughts intensified. Just 12 days before Connor was killed, Bridget and Sean had removed him from school. One afternoon, Conley had come to his mother and said that he was feeling suicidal, and he told her that he had even attempted suicide. He said that he had tried to electrocute himself in the bathtub. He then showed her that he had cuts all over himself, on his chest, arms, stomach and legs. Bridget later commented that she didn't believe that Conley was genuine in his suicide attempts, adding that the electric heater he allegedly tried to kill himself with wasn't plugged in, and that the cuts to his body were only superficial. Conley had been removed from school after this incident, and after he told his parents that he wanted to withdraw from school. He said he wanted to get his GED and join the National Guard. According to Bridget, she believed that Conley's self-destructive behaviour was manipulation to get her to agree that he could quit school. Nevertheless, she did agree, and she also began searching for a therapist for her son. She had wanted to get him a psychologist, but insurance reimbursements requirements meant that he needed to see a therapist before a psychiatrist. Bridget had actually managed to find one, and she planned on calling her on the Monday. But by the Monday, Connor was dead and Conley was in jail. Around the same time, Conley had been on a walk with his girlfriend Alexis when he began to speak about the TV show Dexter. He told his girlfriend that he wanted to be just like Dexter. From behind bars, Conley even made sure to keep up with the TV show.
And did Dexter kill Trinity?
So when Trinity came to, he goes and kills Rita.
So Dexter got arrested?
Yeah.
Dang.
On Tuesday, 2 days after the murder, Conley shuffled into court, where he pleaded not guilty to the murder of Connor. He showed no semblance of emotion as he answered a couple of basic questions from the judge, such as whether he understood the charges against him. Bridget and Sean were noticeably absent from the courtroom. They were a couple of blocks away, attending the viewing of their other son. They greeted a steady supply of friends, family, and strangers as they streamed into MacLeod Funeral Home to view Connor's body. It was an open casket viewing, and Connor had been dressed in a dark suit and tie. Bouquets of flowers surrounded the small coffin. The viewing was private and no media was allowed inside. Malcolm MacLeod, who worked with Sean, commented to the media outside that Connor looked at peace. Conley would be ordered to stand trial for the murder of his brother, and his defence attorney, Gary Sorge, filed a notice of mental disease or defect. This meant that both the prosecution and the defence would be hiring their own mental health experts to examine Conley to determine his frame of mind at the time of the murder. On the 12th of September the following year, jury selection was ready to begin. However, Conley appeared in court that morning where he pleaded guilty to the murder of Connor. The guilty plea was not part of a plea agreement, and prosecutors announced that they would still be seeking a sentence of life in prison without parole for Conley. The guilty plea meant that the trial would be heading straight to the sentencing phase. Since Conley had claimed insanity, prosecutors had lined up several psychiatrists who were willing to testify that he was not legally insane at the time of the murder. During the sentencing phase, a number of experts would testify, including Dr. Hawley, who had performed the autopsy. He detailed how Connor had put up a fierce fight for his life when he was strangled to death by his older brother. He said that it was fully possible that Connor was still alive when his older brother stuffed him into the trunk of the car, but said that his injuries were far too severe to survive. Prosecutors would then play out the videotaped confession of Conley. The tape began to roll, and as it got to the part where Conley described strangling Connor, Conley, who was sitting alongside his defence lawyer, began to cry. Defence attorney Gary Sorge halted the proceedings and said that Conley wanted to be excused from the courtroom. As he said, he couldn't bear to hear any more. Judge James Humphrey denied the request, and said that it was important for Conley to be present to exercise his rights. Conley's mental state at the time of the murders was much of the focus of the sentencing phase. The prosecution called on a psychologist who testified that it was his belief that Conley was mentally ill at the time, but not legally insane. According to Dr. Don Olive, who was a forensic psychologist from Indianapolis, Conley understood that what he was doing was wrong. Several times throughout his confession, he had referred to himself as a monster and commented that he deserved whatever punishment he received. He stated that Conley had suffered from severe depression and had showed symptoms of antisocial disorder and borderline personality disorder. He also said that Conley had showed an inability to control his impulses and his lack of empathy. Another psychologist, Dr. James Daum, testified that he believed that Conley showed signs of being a psychopath. But under cross-examination by the defence, he acknowledged that he had never actually interviewed Conley, just based his opinion on information that was provided to him, mainly information regarding Conley's fantasies. Conley's grandmother, Diana Monk, would testify during the trial. She referred to Conley as a good boy and said that he had always been a wonderful grandchild. She stated, "I don't hate him. I hate what happened. I still love him. I take him in a heartbeat." Diana had visited her grandson in Switzerland County Jail numerous times. She was actually the only one of the family to do so. After the murder of Connor, Bridget and Sean had moved out of state. The emotions that come with the murder of a child, even more so when the murder is committed by another child, were far too raw for the couple, who were left with nothing but memories of their old family. They had refused to visit Conley in jail, and they refused to attend the sentencing phase. As far as they were aware, Conley was no longer their son. While Bridget and Sean were not in attendance, they had filmed earlier depositions.
Can you tell me about Connor?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you tell me about Connor?
What do you want to know?
Well, just tell me what kind of kid he was.
He was a great kid. He loved everybody as long as they treated him nice. He was a ladies' man. He would do anything for anybody.
In these depositions, they both spoke about Connor.
Liked to fish. A lot of outdoor stuff. He liked skateboarding. He loved it. Worked hard in school.
He got good grades?
He had to work a little harder than his brother, but yeah, he was doing real well.
They also both described how when Conley came home after disposing of his brother's body, he appeared to be cheerful and upbeat. He watched a movie, ate some popcorn, and was even cracking jokes with his parents, who were completely oblivious that he had just killed their other son. The prosecution then rested their case, and it was now time for the defence to present theirs. They were hoping for leniency when it came to sentencing Conley, which would mean a sentence of between 45 and 65 years. However, if he were sentenced to the latter, that meant that he could be released much earlier with time served. The first witness was Dr. Edward Connor. He said to the courtroom that it was his belief that Conley had expressed genuine remorse for killing Connor, adding that he struggled very much with the why he killed his brother. During their conversations, Conley had asked Dr. Connor to help him get the death penalty for the crime. Dr. Connor told the courtroom, "Throughout these conversations, I felt there was a genuine level of remorse." He said that when he examined Conley, he found that he was legally sane at the time of the murder, but said that he had suffered from mental problems from the age 11 or 12. He had diagnosed Conley with schizoaffective disorder, the bipolar type, and a sleep disorder. When Dr. Connor was interviewing Conley, he commented that he had oftentimes heard voices in his head. Two further mental health experts revealed that when they spoke with Conley, he told them that when he committed the murder, he felt as though he were watching it unfold, as opposed to physically carrying it out. They said that this is known as disassociation, and it's brought on by stress. Disassociation often begins in children that are undergoing abuse. Abused children will often describe themselves and the abuse being inflicted on them as if they are watching from the ceiling. According to doctors, this is a way to protect themselves from experiencing the trauma. The defence would then speak about Conley's upbringing. Bridget had been married 4 times before she settled down with Sean, and the defence argued that Conley's upbringing was punctuated by the consequent changes in their living arrangements with each marriage. They then alleged that Conley had been anally raped by one of his stepfathers when he was 7 or 8 years old. The information about the rape had come from one of Conley's friends. After he was arrested, this friend had made contact with his defence attorney and told him that Conley had confided in him about the sexual abuse. When Conley was interviewed by Dr. Connor, he asked him about the abuse. Conley replied to the doctor that it was nobody's business and that it was nasty. Conley said that he didn't think to mention it as well because he couldn't see how the abuse and the murder of Connor could be related. Then when he spoke with several other doctors, he completely denied that he was ever sexually abused. Conley was then given the opportunity to speak. He didn't testify, but from the defence table, he read from a handwritten note.
I would like to start by saying that I am very sorry for murdering my little brother, and I will never forget him and how much he meant to me and how much he meant to so many people. I would like to thank all the people out there that support me, and I regret the position I put you all in, and you may be criticized for helping me. I would like to apologize to Mom and Dad for all of this. I would also like to apologize to the community of Ohio County for all this happening. I still have no idea why this happened, but I really wish that I did. I go to sleep every night and I wake up every morning, and I wish I could change what happened. The punishment that I get from Your Honor will be just and fair, and I will accept wholeheartedly the punishment I am given and deserve. While in prison, I plan on getting my GED, then getting a college degree in some sort of history, literature, or in some field of astrology. If I'm not able to get a job in something that pertains to those, then I'll happily run Beth Hurley's restaurant. That is it, Your Honor.
During closing arguments, prosecutor Nagangard quoted Conley. He referred to himself as a monster who should rot in jail for the rest of his life. The prosecutor said that Connor's young age at the time of the murder outweighed whatever factors the defence may cite to try and get a lower sentence. Speaking of Connor, he said that his life was ended far too soon, adding that he absolutely idolised his older brother. He went on to speak about the claims that Conley was mentally ill, so mentally ill that he was not competent for his actions. He stated, "The voices didn't tell him to do it. He just decided to do it." Defence attorney Gary Sorge countered this. He said that 3 separate psychological experts who had interviewed Conley all said that he was suffering from a serious mental illness. Under Indiana law, such a mental illness could be weighed towards leniency. He also said that Conley had fully cooperated, even handing himself into police the following day and leading investigators to Connor's body. According to defence Sorge, Conley had expressed genuine remorse. The defence attorney then went on to say that Conley had accepted responsibility for the murder, adding that he had no criminal record. The decision on Conley's sentence was up to Judge Humphrey. He would ultimately sentence Andrew Conley to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In handing down the sentence, Judge Humphrey emphasised the sheer brutality of the murder and the young age of the victim. He said that Conley had committed 4 separate violent acts against his little brother, including the chokehold, the strangulation, the plastic bag over the head, and then finally the hitting of Connor's head on the concrete to ensure that he was dead. He said that he found Conley's later actions, such as asking for condoms, watching a movie with his girlfriend and then mother, eating popcorn and watching football, as actions that were inconsistent with Conley's claims of remorse. Conley showed no semblance of emotion after the sentence was handed down. But as he left the courtroom, tears could be seen streaming down his face. Outside of court, prosecutor Nagangard said, "He deserved life. That's what he got." Conley's defence team would appeal the sentence, arguing that the judge had given too much credence to Dr. James Dom when he suggested that Conley could be a psychopath. Defence attorney Leanna Wiseman stated, "So there was a thinking that we need to give this juvenile a life sentence because we are afraid that he's a psychopath. And if we don't give him a life sentence, he might come out and kill again." She argued that Conley was mentally ill at the time of the murder, and a more appropriate sentence would have been 55 years. Indiana has a credit for time served law, and if Conley were sentenced to 55 years, then that meant that he could have been released in as little as just 25 years. She further commented that the comparison to Dexter was taken out of context, stating, "As a teenager, you're going to latch on to pop culture in order to explain your feelings. That's what teenagers do. This was a show he watched. He didn't say, 'I want to be like Dexter,' because he kills people." Ultimately, the Supreme Court would uphold Conley's sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the ruling, they wrote that Conley had acted as if nothing was wrong in the wake of the murder, carrying on with his family like normal. They wrote that the heinous facts of the case were difficult to comprehend, and that the sentence was therefore appropriate. Connor Conley had always looked up to his big brother, Andrew Conley. He thought that he was just so cool, and he couldn't wait until he was old enough to hang out with him and his friends. Conley was in a position of trust over his little brother, in the one place on this earth that Connor should have felt safe. In his own home with his big brother, Conley completely obliterated that trust. Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, a massive thank you for listening. I'd also like to say a big huge thank you to my amazing new Patreon supporters, Megan, Felicia, Nicole and Angela. If you want bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus, you can join me on Patreon. In addition, you get ad-free and early release episodes, bonus content and of course, my undying love. Can I ask a massive favour and ask that if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving me a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Ratings and reviews are a super easy way to support a show that you enjoy, and I really do like hearing the feedback, as it helps me improve. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read some true crime articles. And please stay tuned to the end of this episode to hear a promo for the true crime podcast, The Golden Age of Murder. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.
In the 1960s to the early 1990s, the United States saw an unprecedented surge in serial killing, rooted not just in dynamic changes of the post-war period, but in the development of the human psyche going back many millennia to our ancient